Hello, my name is John Doherty, and today we're going to talk about P4, the top of the backswing. This is a spot where the club actually hits 0 miles an hour. And we're going to focus on 3 different areas in this, and we're going to focus on what the arms, hands, club does, upper body, and then the lower body. So we'll hop right in. With the arms, hands, and club, really need to focus on what the right arm is doing. The left arm really just needs in your head to feel like it's just inert, like a piece of rope. So the right arm is really in charge here. So there's really some areas I want you to focus on when you look at your swing. Check out what the arms are doing, the club are doing at the top. At the top of the swing, if I didn't have any body, I don't look like a golfer, and I just check myself, my right arm is doing 3 things. My right arm is flexed, it's in external rotation, and it's somewhat close to my body. And to be exact, I'd like the right elbow to be about 6 inches from the torso at P4. Left arm just follows suit. So the left arm raises and lowers based on external and internal rotation and the flexing of the right elbow. Also, the left wrist cocks automatically, free of charge, when the right elbow flexes. So we don't need to cock the wrist, cup the wrist, let go of the pressure points at the top too much. We need to keep a nice handle on the grip, but really all that's taken care of by what the arms do at the top of the backswing. So right elbow 6 inches off. A lot of golf swings we see lifting, the right elbow gets way away from the torso, or the right arm gets way behind the torso, or the right elbow gets over flexed at the top where it loses that 90-degree angle that I want. So what I'd like to see at the top of your swing is your right arm flex 90 degrees. That's the bicep to the forearm angle. I'd like to see it fully external rotated. That's as far as you're flexible enough to do, and you can do that by holding your arm up and seeing how far your forearm can go around your elbow joint without using your back. So a lot of people at this point, when they try to get their right forearm to their right shoulder to externally rotate, engage their back to do it. So this is a good exercise to try to keep that right shoulder flexible. A lot of people get in a hard time with keeping an internal rotation in the back, lifting the club up, lifting the left arm, lifting the club up, because they're not able to lift the left arm up through external rotation. So that left arm is being raised and lowered through external rotation and internal rotation. Another problem at the top is having too much wrist cock. You really don't want to have the wrist doing a whole lot of business here at the top with the wrist and losing pressure points, because we're in charge with this hand of club shaft control, sweet spot or club head control, and club face control. So those hands need to be in charge of those 3 things throughout the entire swing. So we don't want to let go of that stuff at the top just in effort of gaining a couple miles an hour club head speed. All right, so that's the arms. Now we're going to look at the lower body and upper body. So knee flex is not easy. If I'm sitting here talking to you, I prefer just to stand up without much knee flex. Engaging my quads takes energy. But the great benefit of having your knees flexed and your butt lower, not having your knees flexed and up with your butt up and too bent far forward, but that good posture we talked about in P1 with the knee flex, is it allows me to transfer my pressure in the backswing to my right heel, but having my center of mass centered to slightly forward. So the knee flex in the swing is critical, having that angle with the thighs more back, that butt lower, making sure your spine, lower spine's neutral, having that knee flex in the top of the backswing. I'd like to see your knee, right knee, very straight or flexed, but not locked out or hyperextended. So there's still a little flex in the right knee, but not nearly as much as there is in the left. So the left knee in the backswing is gaining flex and actually moving, and should be, over the golf ball at the top of the swing. So the left knee should have moved over to the top of the golf ball, right knee should have straightened, left knee should have gained flex. If you're lacking flexibility, you can let the left heel come off the ground to allow that to happen, but really looking for 45 degrees of hip turn at P4. Now with the upper torso, I'd like to see the upper torso at the top of the swing doing several complicated things. So what we kind of talked about P1 to P3 is the spine at P1 being neutral, the upper spine being flexed down. We're kind of maintaining that into P2, and then at P3 we're getting kind of some rotation by keeping the right elbow, the right humerus pressure points intact, by keeping my right knee, let my right knee straighten, let my left knee flex. I'm getting some rotation with the hips, I'm getting some rotation with the torso. It gets a little more complicated at P4 with the upper spine, so I want to make sure you get this. With the torso down, so meaning that my torso, the tendency in a backswing is definitely to stand up, because it's so much easier to turn and rotate in a fully extended position. This is much easier than turning in a position where my torso is inclined to the ground. So the spine, while it starts like this and sort of stays like this, is actually moving and extending with the upper part of the spine. So the spine at P1, while it's flexed, at P4 it's back to zero. It has completely extended back to zero. The big problem I see with people doing is they're doing that too early in the backswing. So you'll see people side bend and extend too early, where they get too much rotation with the shoulders and hips when the club's not even halfway back, and then they lift the club at the top. Or they stand up and move away from the golf ball and extend, and now their body and right shoulder especially and their arms are way too far from the golf ball to have a chance. So while P1 to P3 is pretty much staying turtle-backed to some extent with some rotation of the hips and the torso, P4, that spine is going to move into extension. Watch how my spine moves from a little flex forward position to an extended position, and I've maintained the torso inclination through lateral left side bend. So now is the time to kick the side bend in. If you look at my hips and my knees, you can see that my right knee is straight and my left knee is flexed. My left knee is moved in towards the golf ball. I also have this angle here formed between my right knee is higher than my left knee. My right hip is higher than my left hip. Obviously at the top, my right shoulder is going to be much higher than my left shoulder. So the torso motion in the spine at the top feels very much like I'm throwing somebody off my back. But I'm doing all that while maintaining the inclination. So here's my P3, and then in P4, I'm moving my upper spine into extension. Now this will move your left ear from about 1 to 2 inches from the golf ball to back to the golf ball. So this spine motion is moving my head closer to the golf ball. And if I get into a good P4 position at the top of my backswing, you can see that I would definitely fall forward if my left leg wasn't here. So even though all my pressure is in my right heel, my center mass being forward, if my left leg went away, I would fall forward. Now, a lot of people call this a counterfall or a free weight transfer, pressure transfer. So having all my pressure in my right heel, it's very much the opposite of the follow through. Pressure in the right heel, but my center mass is forward. I'm in a good position with my body. If I remove my left leg, I would fall forward. So that puts me in a great position in transition this club to 0 miles an hour to the golf club, because it puts me in a position with my body to naturally start transferring my pressure to my left into P5. So with the body, you really got to focus on putting this all together. And once you get the club in your hands and you're having to do all this with the body at the same time, you just got to constantly go through your checkpoints. So I always start with my feet. Are my feet flared? What's my stance width? My knees are flexed. What's my pelvic area doing in my spine? Making sure that my upper body is not too far bent over my toes. Then at this point, I'm making sure my upper thoracic is curled down. My neck and cervical area are aimed at the ball. Then I look at my arms and hands. Is my grip good? I'm looking for my left arm straight, my hands forward, my right arm slightly flexed. From P1 to P2, I want to keep it on the hands plane. Now, I haven't mentioned that term yet, but the hands plane, you'll see Hogan, Snead, Mack do this, but they keep it very flat going back. Now, they don't change the swing direction by moving it inside, but they keep it on this lower plane established at address with the grip and club shaft pointing somewhere below the zipper at the zipper area. So they're keeping it very flat going back. What does that do? So as my right elbow is flexing and fanning to the right, that's keeping me on the swing direction that I want to go on, but it's also keeping me on plane, the hands plane, the low plane, and that plane won't elevate more until my right elbow flexes more and my right elbow externally rotates. So as I start getting into P3, my plane's now moved up to the elbow plane. I'm going to move it up to the turn shoulder plane in a second once my pivot does its job, and that's my spine going from that slightly flexed position to that extended position. Now you got to watch what the club shaft does, because, and then checkpoint here, if we just want to run through it real quick, 6 inches from my body, my right elbow. My right arm is flexed 90 degrees, not over flexed. My right shoulder is an external rotation. My left arm is parallel to my shoulder plane. My torso and left thigh form almost a 90-degree angle. My right knee is straight, my left knee's flexed. My left knee's also worked towards the ball, and if you need some more added flexibility, let that left heel come off the ground. But as I get to that top of the swing, I also want you to monitor, where is that club shaft? You don't want it laid off at this point, because if it's that flat, you're going to have to do things in the downswing with the club shaft to get it back on plane that aren't good. So I usually stick a driveway reflector or alignment rod in the butt of my grip, and I monitor constantly at P3 to make sure that my club's pointing slightly inside the baseline, because it's real easy at P3 if you're working on external rotation to get too flat, or if you stand up to get too flat. So making sure the alignment rod is, or you can just grip up on the club shaft, pointing at the ground. And then at the top of the swing, that your club shaft's pointing somewhat down the target line. If it's across the line, check that left wrist. It's probably too cupped. You're losing pressure points in the wrist. So at the top of the swing, you really don't want more than a 90-degree angle between your left arm and club shaft at the top. So just to kind of recap, out of breath, it's hot and humid here in the south. Some areas to check, just knee flex. I see too many people have not enough knee flex. Their butt's too high. So get the butt lower, get the knees flexed. Make sure your spine's not in anterior tilt, not too much in posterior tilt, but neutral. Make sure your upper spine's rounded down. We're gonna stay on the hands only plane. And how we do that's the right wrist is just bending. My right elbow is flexing slightly, and my right forearm is working around my elbow. I'm not kicking in at this point. A lot of side bend left. I'm not extending at this point. All that's going to happen after P3 or into P3 when I kick in that upper thoracic extension. My right elbow is 6 inches from my torso. My right elbow is flexed 90. My right shoulder is an external rotation. My left arm never lifted above my shoulder plane. My torso and left femur form at 90 degrees. My right knee is a lot straighter but not locked out. My left knee's flexed and moved in. So at this point, you're in a position at the top of your swing that you're in a counterfall and moving towards the target in the downswing, and not in a position to where you're having to pray for dear life in the downswing to hit a good shot. So check these alignments with your videos. Hit me up on Instagram or in the comments on YouTube, and I look forward to doing P5 next. Thank you very much.